The Zorthians were a race born for war. Every inch of their society was built around conquest, power, and dominance. For centuries, they had expanded their empire across the galaxy, ruthlessly subjugating countless civilizations. Their technology was unparalleled, their warriors feared, and their strategy impeccable. Earth, a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy, had recently come into their sights. To the Zorthians, humanity was nothing more than a minor obstacle, another species to crush under the weight of their military might. And so, the decision was made. Earth would be next. The Zorthian War Council, an elite assembly of the Empire's most powerful leaders, convened to discuss the final preparations for the invasion. Commander Zarthok, a seasoned warrior known for his brutal efficiency, stood at the head of the council. His deep-set eyes surveyed the room, his voice sharp as he laid out the battle plans. "Humans are primitive," he declared, his claws tapping against the holomap displaying Earth. "Their weapons are laughable. Their technology is centuries behind ours, yet they have something we cannot ignore: strategic value. Controlling this planet will give us an outpost near several key trade routes, a tactical advantage we cannot afford to pass up." The council murmured in agreement. For them, Earth was nothing but a stepping stone, another prize in their endless quest for domination. Resources, positioning, and the elimination of a potential threat. That was all humanity represented. The Zorthians were preparing for a swift, brutal campaign. Zarthok's plan was simple: launch a full-scale assault, overwhelm Earth's defenses, and take control within days. The war fleet was assembled, hovering ominously near the edges of the solar system, ready to strike at a moment's notice. Their ships, dark and foreboding, were equipped with weapons capable of leveling cities, and they had no doubt that victory would be swift. Unbeknownst to humanity, their days were numbered. On Earth, life continued as usual. People went about their daily routines, completely unaware that an alien empire was poised to destroy them. Scientists studied the stars, unaware that what they were looking for was already watching them. Military forces trained, but for threats far smaller than the one lurking just beyond their reach. Earth was vulnerable, and the Zorthians were more than ready to exploit that vulnerability. To finalize the invasion plans, Zarthok ordered a small reconnaissance mission. A few select scouts would be sent to Earth to gather intelligence, to ensure there were no surprises before the fleet descended in full force. One of these scouts was Zarlan, a younger Zorthian with a reputation for being more observant than most. He had a curiosity that others found unnecessary, but Zarthok valued his thoroughness. Up to a point, Zarlan's task was simple: observe humanity up close, confirm their weaknesses, and return with valuable data. He was expected to be in and out with minimal engagement. No one expected humans to put up much of a fight, but the Zorthians didn't leave anything to chance. They wanted to know their enemy before crushing them. Zarlan boarded his small, stealth-equipped ship and set a course for Earth. As the planet loomed in his view, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of something unfamiliar. Was it curiosity? He pushed the thought aside as he entered Earth's atmosphere, scanning for a remote location to land. The mission was purely tactical, he reminded himself. There was no place for idle thoughts. His ship descended silently, coming to rest in a rural area far from human cities. From his vantage point, Zarlan could see the landscape spread out before him: lush greenery, rolling hills, and scattered homes. He activated his cloaking device and began his surveillance, observing the strange, fragile creatures called humans as they went about their daily lives. They were smaller than Zorthians, softer, without the natural defenses that Zarlan's people had evolved over millennia. Yet there was something about them that puzzled him. For days, Zarlan watched. He recorded data, noting their technology, basic compared to Zorthian standards, and their behavior. Humans were unpredictable, their actions often driven by emotions that Zarlan found difficult to understand. They were social creatures, often engaging in what appeared to be illogical displays of affection toward one another. He saw families, friends, and something else, small creatures that the humans seemed particularly attached to. Zarlan had been trained to focus on strategic weaknesses, to look for points of vulnerability. But the more he watched these humans, the more questions arose in his mind. There was an element of their existence that the Zorthian War Council had overlooked, something intangible, yet undeniably powerful. He recorded his observations, preparing to send them back to Commander Zarthok. Everything appeared to be as the Council had predicted. Humans were technologically inferior, physically weak and emotionally driven, but Zarlan couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to them, something that the data couldn't capture. He didn't know it yet, but his encounter with a small, seemingly insignificant detail of Earth's life would soon change everything. Zarlan's reconnaissance mission was nearing its end, and everything seemed to be going according to plan. He had gathered ample data on human life, their technology, and their seemingly fragile nature. The invasion could proceed without a hitch, yet despite his meticulous observations, something kept nagging at him, an unsettled feeling that there was more to these humans than their superficial weaknesses. On the last day of his mission, as Zarlan prepared to return to his ship, he decided to explore a bit further. His scans had indicated a small, isolated settlement nearby, a single farmhouse surrounded by fields, far from the bustling cities he had observed before. It was an insignificant location by any military standard, but something about its remoteness intrigued him. As he approached the farmhouse, cloaked and undetectable, Zarlan noticed a family living there, 2 adults and a child, going about their peaceful lives. They seemed relaxed, unaware of the looming threat of intergalactic war. They laughed together, shared a meal, and tended to their modest farm. It was all very strange to Zarlan, whose own culture valued strength, efficiency, and conquest above all else. But what really caught his attention was something much smaller. There, near the front porch of the house, was a cluster of tiny creatures frolicking in the sunlight. At first, Zarlan couldn't make sense of them. They were small, soft-looking animals, no larger than a Zorthian's hand, with large eyes and absurdly oversized ears. They moved with a kind of playful energy that seemed entirely pointless, chasing after each other, tumbling in the grass, batting at invisible objects with their tiny paws. Zarlan zoomed in on the creatures with his scanner, trying to identify their purpose. He had seen animals before, Earth was full of them, but these were unlike anything he had encountered. They didn't hunt, they didn't defend, they didn't serve any clear role in the ecosystem. They were, as far as he could tell, completely useless, but the humans didn't seem to think so. As Zarlan observed, the family's child knelt down and scooped up one of the creatures, holding it close and giggling as it mewed softly. The child's parents smiled warmly at the scene, and the creature itself, one of the kittens, as his translator identified them, purred in contentment. The small thing nestled into the child's arms as though it had no fear in the world, no sense of danger or survival instinct. It was trusting, fragile, and utterly defenseless. For the first time in his life, Zarlan felt something he didn't quite recognize: fascination. He watched as the kittens tumbled over one another, their clumsy movements eliciting laughter from the family. Their innocent, carefree behavior was something entirely foreign to him. In the Zorthian world, weakness was eradicated, fragility was not cherished, and innocence was a sign of vulnerability to be eliminated. Yet, here were these humans, actively protecting and nurturing creatures that served no tactical purpose, no advantage, nothing but companionship and joy. Zarlan's mind raced. These kittens were clearly beloved by the humans, a part of their family unit. The adults even took time to play with them, stroking their soft fur and watching them chase after string with pure, unfiltered happiness. Zarlan was perplexed. In his culture, this kind of behavior would be seen as a waste of time, but here, it was celebrated. The humans seemed to find joy in the kitten's innocence, and it was unlike anything Zarlan had ever witnessed. As he stood there, hidden from view, one of the kittens broke away from the group. It trotted toward the edge of the yard, eyes wide and curious, its tiny tail twitching behind it. Before Zarlan could react, the kitten wandered straight toward him, unaware of the cloaked alien presence looming nearby. The small creature looked up, staring directly at Zarlan's invisible form, its large eyes gleaming with curiosity. For a brief moment, Zarlan felt an odd connection to this tiny, delicate life form. There was no fear in its gaze, no hesitation, just pure, unguarded wonder. It batted at the air, as if trying to play with the invisible force before it, its tiny paw swiping at where Zarlan stood. Zarlan froze, unsure of how to react. He had faced countless enemies, fought in brutal battles, and stared down death without blinking. But here, in front of this tiny kitten, he felt disarmed in a way he had never experienced. The kitten mewed softly, then, satisfied that nothing was amiss, it turned and bounded back to its siblings, joining them in their playful chaos. The moment passed, but Zarlan's mind lingered on it. This small, defenseless creature had no idea of the dangers that surrounded it, no awareness of the warship hovering just beyond Earth's atmosphere, ready to rain destruction upon its world. And yet, it lived in complete trust and happiness, cared for by humans who seemed to take joy in its very existence. Zarlan returned to his ship that evening, but his thoughts were troubled. He had recorded the expected data: human weaknesses, their lack of advanced technology, their emotional behavior, but the kittens had changed something in him. He found himself hesitating before sending his report back to the Zorthian fleet. Could a species capable of such care, such compassion for fragile life, really be as weak and insignificant as they believed? He had been taught that innocence was a liability, but here on Earth, it seemed to be a strength. He thought of Commander Zarthok, who would surely dismiss these creatures as irrelevant. Yet Zarlan couldn't help but feel that there was more to the story. There was something about these kittens, and the humans who loved them, that unsettled him, something that made him question whether the Zorthians truly understood what they were about to destroy. For the first time, Zarlan felt doubt. The mission had been clear from the start: gather intelligence, report back, and prepare for invasion. But now, as he stared at his report, his finger hovered over the transmit button. Was there something more to humans? Something that the Zorthians, in their pursuit of domination, had overlooked? Could the fate of a planet, and perhaps even a galaxy, really be influenced by creatures as small and innocent as these kittens? With a deep breath, Zarlan sent his report, but he left out the part about the kittens. For now, back aboard the Zorthian warship, Zarlan was restless. The images of the kittens played over and over in his mind, disrupting his usual calm, analytical demeanor. He'd always been thorough in his work, leaving no detail unexamined, but this time he had left something crucial out of his report. The kittens had stirred something in him that he didn't understand, something he couldn't quantify or explain in terms that the War Council would respect. How could he? To them, kittens were irrelevant, nothing more than a distraction. But the more he thought about it, the more he wondered if those tiny creatures represented something deeper about humans, something that went beyond mere tactics and strategy. Zarlan was no philosopher, but he knew enough about his own species to understand that the Zorthians saw life in a stark binary way: strength versus weakness. In their eyes, the weak were meant to be conquered, the strong to rule. But these humans, there was something different about them, something that didn't fit into those clean categories. As his thoughts churned, Zarlan reached out to the one Zorthian he trusted with such uncertainties: Zira, a scientist aboard the fleet who had always shown more curiosity than the average Zorthian. If anyone could make sense of his growing doubts, it was her. Zira, Zarlan began through the encrypted communication channel. I've observed something on Earth that I can't explain. It doesn't fit with what we know about humans. Zira's voice crackled over the channel. What is it, Zarlan? Something of tactical importance? I don't know, he admitted, hesitating. It's about these creatures, these small, soft animals the humans keep. They call them kittens. They're defenseless, utterly weak, and yet the humans care for them. They protect them, and in doing so seem to find joy. It's illogical. Zira was silent for a moment, processing the information. Are you saying that the humans' affection for these creatures is somehow significant? I'm saying it could be, Zarlan replied. I don't understand it fully, but I think there's something we've missed. The humans aren't just weak, they're complex. Their relationships with these creatures suggest they value something more than survival. Zira's curiosity was piqued. Unlike most Zorthians, she had a tendency to question things beyond their immediate use in warfare. Interesting. Perhaps their emotional capacity has deeper implications than we thought. It could mean they're capable of a broader range of responses to stress, loss, or even conquest. Are you suggesting we need to reconsider our approach? Zarlan frowned. I don't know what I'm suggesting. All I know is that these kittens, and the way humans interact with them, point to something we don't fully understand. It's as if their innocence and playfulness represent something vital to the human spirit. It's unsettling. Zira chuckled softly. Unsettling, you say? Zarlan, you've never been one to let emotions cloud your judgment, but perhaps there's something here. I'd like to see these creatures myself. Maybe there's a pattern in the humans' behavior that could help us understand them better. Zarlan felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. I'm not sure the War Council would appreciate us studying kittens when we're on the brink of invasion. The Council doesn't need to know, Zira replied smoothly. Commander Zarthok, however, might. He values thoroughness, and if we present this as a study in human behavior, he might listen. Besides, if there's even a chance that this knowledge could prevent unnecessary complications during the invasion, we owe it to the Empire to investigate. Zarlan hesitated. Involving Zarthok meant risking exposure. If the commander dismissed the idea, Zarlan could be ridiculed or worse, stripped of his position. But Zira was right. If there was even a small chance that these kittens and the emotions they stirred in humans were important, they had to explore it. Reluctantly, Zarlan agreed. He would present his findings, though he feared how they would be received. Zira, eager to delve deeper, promised to support him. Together, they prepared a report, framing it not as a distraction, but as a potential key to understanding human psychology. When the time came to address Zarthok, Zarlan's nerves were frayed. Standing before the imposing commander, he began his report with the usual tactical analysis: humanity's weaknesses, their technology, their societal structures. Everything went as expected until he reached the part about the kittens. "These creatures," Zarlan said, his voice steady but his hands slightly trembling, "are insignificant in terms of physical threat. They serve no purpose other than companionship, but the humans, particularly their young, show immense care and affection for them. I believe this could point to a deeper understanding of their emotional resilience." Zarthok stared at him, his brow furrowing. "Are you telling me that you think these creatures, these kittens, are relevant to our invasion plans?" Zarlan swallowed hard. "Not directly, Commander, but they symbolize something about humans we have yet to comprehend. They value life in ways we do not. This could affect how they respond to conflict, to loss, even to potential destruction. I believe their connection to these creatures is worth further study." Zira, standing by Zarlan's side, spoke up. "Commander, Zarlan's observations suggest that humans may not be as straightforward as we assumed. Their capacity for compassion, even toward creatures that offer no strategic value, could signal a different kind of strength. If we misunderstand this, it could lead to unforeseen resistance during the invasion." Zarthok's gaze narrowed. He was not one to entertain weakness, but he had also learned to value thoroughness in his campaigns. "You're suggesting these emotions could be a weapon?" "In a way, yes," Zira said, stepping forward. "We believe these emotions give humans a unique kind of resilience. Their bonds with weaker creatures may extend to their own species, allowing them to endure more than we expect. It could affect their response to our invasion." Zarthok was silent for a long time. His fingers drummed on the table as he weighed their words. Finally, he leaned back, his eyes locking onto Zarlan. "I will not delay the invasion over such trivial matters. However, I am not a fool. If there's even a remote chance that these creatures and the emotions they invoke could complicate our plans, I will see for myself. Prepare a shuttle. I will go to this planet and observe these kittens personally." Zarlan felt a wave of both relief and dread wash over him. Zarthok's decision to visit Earth could change everything, but if the commander didn't see the value in what Zarlan had observed, it could mean disaster for him and Zira. As they made preparations for Zarthok's secret visit to Earth, Zarlan couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was about to happen. The kittens, innocuous as they seemed, had already shifted his perspective. He could only hope that Zarthok would be similarly moved by the innocence of the tiny creatures, though he had no idea just how much was at stake. The stage was set. The commander of the Zorthian invasion fleet would soon come face to face with the kittens that had sparked doubt in Zarlan's warrior heart. And with that encounter, the fate of two species might very well be decided. Commander Zarthok's decision to visit Earth was as unprecedented as it was dangerous. Zorthian leaders rarely left the safety of their warships, especially not to observe creatures as seemingly trivial as Earth's kittens. But Zarlan's report, combined with Zira's support, had stirred something in the commander, a desire to see for himself what strange power these creatures held over the humans. Perhaps deep down, Zarthok was wary of any unknown factor that could threaten the success of his conquest, or perhaps there was a small part of him that was genuinely curious, though he would never admit it. The stealth shuttle descended toward the same rural farm Zarlan had observed. Zarthok, along with Zarlan and Zira, remained cloaked within the shuttle as it landed just beyond the farmhouse. The evening sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, a peaceful contrast to the tense mission they were undertaking. Zarthok's towering figure moved with purpose as he stepped out of the ship, his eyes scanning the area. His imposing frame, clad in dark Zorthian armor, made him appear almost as a shadow against the tranquil landscape. They made their way quietly toward the farmhouse, where the family Zarlan had previously observed was finishing their dinner. Inside, laughter echoed softly, the humans oblivious to the war that loomed just beyond the stars. Zarthok paid them little mind for now. He was here to see the creatures that had caused such confusion in his scout. As if on cue, the kittens emerged from the house, tumbling into the yard in their usual playful fashion. There were 5 of them, small, fluffy, and full of boundless energy. They chased after each other in the fading light, their soft mews filling the air as they pounced on one another, oblivious to the unseen alien presence watching them. Zarthok crossed his arms, his stern expression unchanging as he observed the tiny creatures. "These are the animals you spoke of?" he asked, his voice low and unimpressed. "Yes, Commander," Zarlan replied, feeling a knot of anxiety tighten in his chest. "They're harmless, yes, but it's their effect on the humans that's noteworthy. They seem to evoke a sense of deep affection, even protection. It's not just care, it's joy." Zarthok's gaze remained fixed on the kittens, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Joy," he repeated, the word foreign on his tongue. He watched as one of the kittens batted playfully at a falling leaf, its tiny paws swiping clumsily at the air. The commander's features softened for the briefest of moments, though he quickly masked it with his usual cold demeanor. Zira stepped forward, her voice calm and measured. "Commander, these creatures may seem insignificant, but their presence in human life reveals something important. They represent a bond, a connection to something innocent and fragile. It's this bond that gives the humans a kind of emotional strength we may have overlooked." Zarthok let out a dismissive grunt. "Emotions are not strength, they are weakness. How does caring for fragile creatures make them more formidable?" Zarlan hesitated before responding. "It's not the creatures themselves, but the fact that humans invest so much in their protection. They're willing to defend what is weak, and that may extend to how they see themselves and each other. Their bond with these kittens suggests they value life in a way we don't. It could give them the resolve to fight back in ways we haven't anticipated." The commander said nothing, but his gaze remained fixed on the kittens. One of them, a particularly curious little ball of fur, wandered closer to the invisible aliens. It mewed softly as it ventured toward Zarthok's feet, completely unaware of the danger it was in. The kitten paused, tilting its head as if sensing something strange in the air. In that moment, Zarthok crouched down, his eyes locked on the small creature before him. His massive frame loomed over the kitten, but instead of fear, the tiny animal seemed fascinated. It batted playfully at the air where Zarthok's leg was, unaware of his cloaked presence. Zarthok stared at the kitten unmoving. There was no logical reason for this interaction to matter, no strategic advantage, no military gain, and yet, as the kitten continued its playful dance, Zarthok felt something stir within him. It was faint, a feeling long buried beneath years of war and conquest, but it was there. He watched the kitten for what felt like an eternity, its innocence and carefree nature standing in stark contrast to everything Zarthok had ever known. Zarlan and Zira exchanged glances, unsure of what to make of the commander's silence. They had expected him to dismiss the kittens as irrelevant, perhaps even scold them for wasting his time, but instead, Zarthok remained crouched, his eyes never leaving the tiny creature before him. Finally, the kitten let out a soft mew and padded away, joining its siblings in their game of chase. Zarthok stood slowly, his expression unreadable. For a moment no one spoke. The air between them was thick with unspoken tension. "You think these humans will fight to protect such creatures?" Zarthok asked, his voice softer now, though still filled with the weight of authority. Zarlan nodded. "I do, Commander. I think their capacity to protect what is small and vulnerable speaks to a greater resilience. They may be weak in terms of physical power and technology, but emotionally, they are far more complex than we anticipated. They won't fight for dominance, but for love, for each other, and perhaps even for creatures like these." Zarthok was quiet, processing Zarlan's words. In the silence, the sound of the kitten's playful mews filled the night air, a reminder of the simple, innocent life that humans cherished. It was a life that the Zorthians, in all their power and might, had never truly understood. "Humans," Zarthok began slowly, his eyes narrowing as he spoke. "They are weak, but they are not without their strengths. What you say may hold some truth, Zarlan. If they fight for these creatures, for each other, it could complicate our plans. An enemy driven by love is unpredictable." Zarlan and Zira remained silent, waiting for the commander's next words. "Return to the ship," Zarthok ordered finally. "We will reconsider our strategy. I will not allow a miscalculation to cost us the invasion. If these humans are more resilient than we thought, then we must approach them differently." Zarlan felt a wave of relief wash over him. Zarthok wasn't dismissing the kittens or the humans' emotional bonds out of hand. There was a chance, perhaps a small one, that the invasion could be stopped, or at least altered in a way that would spare Earth from total destruction. As they made their way back to the shuttle, Zarthok glanced back at the farmhouse one last time. The kittens were still playing in the yard, their soft purrs and mews carrying through the quiet night. "Perhaps," Zarthok muttered to himself, though loud enough for Zarlan and Zira to hear. There is more to strength than power alone. Neither Zarlan nor Zira responded, but they both knew that something profound had shifted in the commander. It was as if the kittens, in all their innocent simplicity, had planted a seed of doubt in Zarthok's mind, a doubt that could change the course of the war. As the shuttle ascended back into the sky, Zarlan couldn't help but smile to himself. The fate of Earth, it seemed, now rested in the paws of the kittens, and for the first time in his life, Zarlan felt hope. Back on the Zorthian warship, the atmosphere was charged with uncertainty. The War Council had gathered for an emergency meeting, and the mood was tense. Zarthok stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding attention. Zarlan and Zira flanked him, the two of them acutely aware of the weight of the moment. They were about to present an entirely new strategy, one that was born from a simple yet profound encounter with a handful of kittens. "Commander," one of the council members began, a hulking figure named Garthok, who had fought in many battles. "You've returned from the surface. Did you confirm the intelligence we received regarding humanity's defenses?" Zarthok straightened, his voice steady. "Our intelligence was incomplete. We underestimated the emotional resilience of humans, particularly their attachment to their creatures." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, and Garthok's eyes narrowed. "You're saying that kittens pose a threat? This is absurd." "Not the kittens themselves," Zarthok replied, his patience waning. "It's what they represent. Zarlan and Zira have observed that humans exhibit an unusual emotional bond with these creatures, suggesting a level of care and protection that could manifest as formidable resistance against our forces." "Commander, we are warriors. Emotion has no place in battle," Garthok interjected, his voice booming. "We should crush them, not analyze their feelings. We're wasting time." Zarlan stepped forward, determined to back Zarthok's argument. "With all due respect, Garthok, this isn't merely about emotions. This bond could drive the humans to unite in ways we haven't considered. They are not simply fighting for territory. They may fight for love, for innocence. If we go in with overwhelming force, we risk awakening something unpredictable in them. We may provoke a level of defiance that leads to a prolonged conflict." Zarthok nodded, encouraging Zarlan to continue. "If we can find a way to leverage this emotional complexity, we might negotiate a resolution that spares both sides from needless loss. We cannot assume they will simply submit to our will." The council chamber erupted into chaos. Some members were in favor of reconsidering their approach, while others shouted to continue the invasion as planned. Amidst the noise, Zarthok raised his hand for silence, his expression unwavering. "We will not move forward with the invasion as originally planned. We will take a different approach." His voice, strong and authoritative, cut through the discord. "I propose a delegation be sent to Earth to negotiate. We must engage with humanity in a manner that reflects our new understanding of them." Another council member, Tehran, who had always been skeptical of Zarthok's decisions, leaned forward. "And if they refuse to negotiate? If they rally against us, we will be vulnerable." "Vulnerability can be an opportunity," Zarthok countered. "We will not appear as conquerors. We will present ourselves as ambassadors. We will extend an olive branch, recognizing their value for life, even if it's through something as trivial as their kittens." The room fell quiet as the council considered Zarthok's proposal. After a tense moment, Garthok grunted, "If this fails, it will be your head on the line, Zarthok." "I accept that risk," Zarthok replied, unwavering. "We will not allow pride to dictate our actions. We must learn to see beyond our conventional understanding of power." The council ultimately voted to allow the delegation, albeit begrudgingly. Zarlan felt a wave of relief wash over him. This was not just a reprieve for Earth, it was an opportunity for understanding. As the council began discussing the logistics of the mission, he exchanged a glance with Zira, who nodded in approval. They had taken the first step toward changing the course of history. Days later, the Zorthian shuttle touched down in a secluded area near the same farmhouse. The humans were startled to see the sleek, dark vessel descend from the sky, but the Zorthians had taken precautions to minimize the impact of their arrival. A small group had gathered outside, including the family that had cared for the kittens. Zarlan, Zira, and Zarthok disembarked, their imposing figures stark against the quaint backdrop of the Earth countryside. The humans stared wide-eyed, uncertainty etched across their faces. Zarthok stepped forward, his voice booming yet tempered with an unusual softness. "Humans of Earth, we come not as conquerors, but as seekers of understanding. We wish to speak." The humans exchanged wary glances, their instinct to protect their home overriding their curiosity. The family's young daughter stepped forward, holding one of the kittens close to her chest. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Zarthok regarded the kitten, its tiny eyes glimmering with innocence. "We wish to learn about your ways. Your bond with these creatures has intrigued us, and we seek a path toward peace." The daughter, emboldened by her kitten's presence, took a step closer. "You want to learn about kittens? They're just pets. Why do you care?" Zarlan could see Zarthok struggle to articulate his thoughts. "It is not just about kittens. It is about what they represent to you, to humanity. We recognize that strength is not solely in domination, but in connection to each other, and to all life." A murmur passed through the humans as they processed Zarthok's words. The father of the family, stepping forward, folded his arms. "And what does this mean for us? Are you going to leave us alone, or do you want to conquer us with kindness?" Zarlan stepped in, his voice steady. "We wish to understand. Our intent is to avoid conflict. We realize now that your resilience is rooted in your capacity for love, and we seek a way to coexist." A hushed silence fell over the group, the humans exchanging glances filled with uncertainty and intrigue. The daughter lifted the kitten high in her arms, her eyes sparkling with hope. "If you want to understand, maybe we can show you. Kittens are just one part of our lives, but they mean a lot to us." Zarthok nodded slowly, clearly moved. "Then show us. Teach us about your world, and perhaps we can find a way to ensure our peoples do not meet in conflict." As the humans and Zorthians began to engage in conversation, the atmosphere shifted from one of fear and hostility to curiosity and tentative hope. The kittens, oblivious to the monumental implications of their presence, began to frolic around the feet of the aliens, drawing laughter from the humans and puzzled expressions from their extraterrestrial observers. Over the following days, the delegation was welcomed into the family's home, where they learned not just about kittens, but about human culture, values, and the bonds that connected them. The Zorthians listened, fascinated, as the humans spoke of love, compassion, and the importance of protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Zarthok found himself captivated by the stories. He realized that the kittens represented a facet of humanity he had never acknowledged, a beauty in vulnerability, and an unwavering strength that came from unity. As they shared meals and laughter, a bond began to form. Zarlan watched in awe as the once mighty Zorthian commander began to soften, his understanding of humanity deepening with each passing moment. In the end, it was not the Zorthians' weapons that determined the fate of their encounter, but rather the small, soft presence of the kittens and the love they inspired. What had begun as an impending war had transformed into an opportunity for peace, a peace forged in the most unexpected of ways. As the Zorthians prepared to leave Earth, they took with them a promise of goodwill, a newfound understanding, and a connection that transcended the stars. They were not just warriors, they were ambassadors of change, carrying a message back to their world that perhaps strength lay not in conquest, but in compassion. Zarlan stood at the edge of the shuttle, looking back at the humans waving goodbye, a warm feeling swelling in his chest. The kittens, now more than just innocent creatures, had become symbols of hope, a reminder that even in the depths of conflict, love and understanding could triumph. And as the shuttle ascended into the vastness of space, Zarlan smiled, knowing that the fate of humanity, and the Zorthians, had indeed rested in the paws of adorable kittens. The galaxy was a little brighter that day, thanks to the unexpected power of love and innocence, and the possibility of peace was now on the horizon.